What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I want to talk about Mars. They're my favourite house, I've made no secret about this. And they are, frankly, a stunning house. I want to talk about stunning in Mars. Now, when Age of Ascension came out, I spent a very long time making a spreadsheet with all the information about every card. But it means I can search through that information quickly. And I had a look today at the cards that can stun your opponent's creatures. And there are 2 stunning cards in Brobnar, 2 in Dis, 2 in Logos, 2 in Sanctum, 2 in Untamed, none in Shadows, and 7 in Mars. There are 3.5 times as many cards in Mars that can stun your opponent's creatures as there are in any other house. The question is, are they any good? Well, let's start off having a look at one of my favourite designed cards in the set, Agent Who-Man. This was one of the early images we got from Wave 2 was a little collection of cards, and we could see that Agent Who-Man was there, but we couldn't actually read what it did, and it made me incredibly sad. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, we know what Agent Who-Man does, and actually, I've got a couple of decks with Agent Who-Man in, and it makes me rather happy. And what it does, it's a 2-power creature that does have elusive, so it stays on the field a little bit longer. When you reap, you stun a friendly non-Mars creature and an enemy non-Mars creature. Now, Agent Who-Man is very much a double-edged sword. I've used this a lot, and it's not optional. You have to stun a friendly non-Mars creature if you have one, and an enemy non-Mars creature if they have one. Now, using this when you've only got Mars creatures out is just brilliant, because you can stun whoever you want. But I've played enough games with this where I stun my own creatures that as much as I love Agent Who-Man, and I do, I have reservations about how great it actually is in a lot of games. Zsysyx Shockworm. 3 power, 1 armor creature, nice and simply. After an enemy creature reaps, stun it. It just stops your opponent reaping. Now, to be clear, it doesn't stop them reaping now, but it means that when they reap, they get stunned, so they cannot reap next turn. So it's kind of like a delayed you can't reap. Oh, sure, you can reap this turn. Have fun reaping next turn. But of course, if they're stunned, it's not just that they can't reap, it's also that they can't use any actions, they can't fight, etc. It's kind of fun. And it's not actually that unique. Now, there are a whole bunch of other cards that do this in Age of Ascension, Pip in Logos, for instance. But it's not even unique within Mars because we've got Stormcrawler. Now, Stormcrawler is a 6-power 1 armor creature, significantly beastlier. And after an enemy creature reaps, stun it. It does exactly the same thing. The downside is it only deals 1 damage when fighting. It kind of has to. This is there as a balancing act. Because otherwise you've got a 6-power 1 armor creature that's stunning all your opponent's creatures when they reap. It would be too good. So, if you can get, say, a Stormcrawler and a Zsysyx Shockworm down, you're going to be stunning an awful lot of creatures on your opponent's side of the board. Now, they might not want to reap, but one of the things we see in Age of Ascension is longer battle lines, more creatures out, more reaping, frankly. And that means that cards like this can really take advantage. Now, they don't have elusive, so they can be knocked out in one go. But Zsysyx Shockworm is a 3-power 1 armor creature. Stormcrawler is a 6-power 1 armor creature. And, you know, you've got Mr. Fixfinger here, who can give you a little bit of armor. Not Stormcrawler, he's not a Martian, but Shockworm can. Maybe you can keep him out for a little while. And while we're here, how about AEMBER Conduction Unit? Now, it's not quite the same, it's an artifact. But after an enemy creature reaps, the first time it's stunned. So the first enemy creature that reaps gets stunned each turn. No, it's not as good as Stormcrawler or Zsysyx Shockworm, because it can only stun a maximum of 1 creature per turn. but that's better than no creatures. And all three of these together, and there are decks that have multiples of these, or even all of these. And it's kind of getting to the point where even reaping a tool becomes more difficult. And maybe you've got loads of amber bonus on your card. Maybe you don't need to reap to get the amber that you need to forge a key. But a lot of decks do need to. And this could be hurting them. But we're not done there, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Zsysyx KNOWDRONE. I'm just going to call it KNOWDRONE from now on, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little bit awkward to say, as with so many of these lovely Mars creatures. 3 power creature, 1 armor, and when you play, you archive a card, and you may purge an archive card to stun a creature. Now, the good news for your opponent, at least, this is a one-time deal. It's a play ability. You play, you use it, it's done. And then it just sits there as a vanilla 3 power 1 armor creature. Now, that's not to say you're not going to have something like Nature's Call, or even something like Total Recall, to get these creatures back into your hand and then be able to play them back down again. Total Recall, incidentally, for each friendly ready creature gain 1 amber, return each friendly creature to your hand. That's kind of good. And don't be forgetting about Key Abduction, whereby you pick up all of your Mars creatures as to your opponent, and then you forge a key at +9 current cost, reduced by 1 for each card in your hand. And then, of course, after you forge the key, you can play back down KNOWDRONE and stun an enemy creature. It's kind of cool. Like I said, it's a one-shot thing. It's a one-time deal. But it can stun quite nicely. And the great thing about this is, unlike all of these other ones I've been talking about, it works. Agent Who-Man comes in exhausted unless you got something like a soft landing, but you'd have to have it as a legacy card, which is a little bit awkward. Otherwise, it comes in exhausted and your opponent can destroy it before it gets used. The other ones we talked about, your opponent gets stunned when they reap, so that's their choice. KNOWDRONE just comes down here and gets them. And we also have Shard of Hate. Now, we looked at all the shards the other day. I'll let you guys have a look at that video. I'll pop a link in the description. I actually, spoiler alert, put this as the worst shard. Now, I know not everybody agrees with me, and I'm fine with that. I'm a Mars fanboy. So believe me, when I put it bottom of the list, it's not because I hate Mars by any stretch of the imagination. It's because I looked at it objectively and it came out bottom. But for each friendly shard, you stun an enemy creature. Usually 2 or 3 shards, so you can potentially stun 2 or 3 creatures. And that's kind of cool. I'm not saying Shard of Hate is a bad card. I'm saying if you compare it to something like Shard of Greed that just gains you 2 or 3 amber, it's not even close. But it's a really good card that can do a bunch of stunning. And then we've got Zorg. Now, Zorg's a weird one because he actually comes into play stunned. But it's a 7 power creature, and before the fight, you stun the creature you're fighting and each of its neighbours. So as long as your opponent has got 3 creatures on the field, you can literally stun 3 creatures in one go. Which is frankly ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. It is over the top dumb. But it comes into play exhausted, and it comes into play stunned. So you've got to wait a turn for it to not be exhausted. Then you've got to use a turn, or use it during a Mars turn to unstun it. Then you can use it. So as much as this could be a phenomenal card, there is quite a phenomenal balancing factor here, in that it comes in and it's already stunned. Although a card I do want to mention here nice and quickly, Mars First. Mars First gives you an amber bonus and lets you ready and use a friendly Mars creature. So if you've got Zorg rolling, then you're stunning 3 creatures, but then with a Mars First you can make that 6 and end up stunning their entire battle line quite quickly. It's kind of fun. I do have a deck with 3 Mars First. I don't have any decks with Zorg in. sad face, etc. And while we're talking about Zorg, quick shout out to YZPHYZ Dominator. Doesn't actually stun your opponent's creatures, so I'm not counting it in the 7, but it does come in stunned like Zorg, and it's a 9 power 1 armor creature with taunt, so I think it's worth giving it a bit of a shout out here. Mars has significantly more stunning than any other house in Age of Ascension. We're literally talking 7 cards when they all have 2 except for Shadows. Don't feel bad for Shadows, it's not what they do, it's fine. So I thought, you know what, we should talk about this. I'm going to do a bunch of videos like this. We're going to talk about Untamed adding power counters. We're going to talk about Shadows stealing Amber, logos archiving, drawing cards. I'm a little bit excited. We're going to go through a bunch of these. So if you've got any suggestions, any ones you'd like me to dig into, please do let me know in the comment section and I will get to them. And of course, tell me which of these cards you like. Tell me about your decks. One of my favourite things about Keyforge is hearing stories about other people's decks and the combos they've got. So chuck them down below. I'd be delighted to read them. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk about games like Keyforge and a whole bunch of others. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching Wossy Plays.